Hi, this is Scott with 4D Tech. Today we are in a 15 and newer body style Ford Edge that came equipped with the 4-inch screen. We are going to be performing the 4 to 8-inch conversion from 4D Tech to add Sync 3 to this vehicle. To perform this upgrade, we need a few basic tools. We need a small socket wrench with an extension that has a 7/32 socket on it, a 7mm nut driver, and some plastic dash removal tools. The 7mm nut driver and plastic dash removal tools are available on our website for your convenience. Let's get started. First, we need to remove a few things out of the console here to work our way up and get the front bezel off. These side pieces on each side of the console here just simply unsnap, and we can use our plastic dash removal tools to take them out. You just pry out to release the clips. And we'll move them out of the way. Same thing on the driver's side. Next, we'll need to pull up on this plastic piece surrounding the shifter. And that you can get right underneath it and unsnap it. And we'll also want to use our plastic dash removal tools to release these clips up front here. We'll need to turn on the ignition, which we can do by pushing the start button once without having our foot on the brake, and then move the shifter back, and we'll also set the parking brake by pulling up, just for safety. When we lift this bezel out of the way, there are a couple connectors underneath. They're kind of hard to see, but there's a clip facing the outside on each connector, and you'll push that clip in and unplug the connectors. And then same on the driver's side here. When you unplug this connector for the parking brake, you will get a parking brake malfunction indicator on the dash. Once we return everything to normal and cycle the ignition once, that fault will go away. So it's nothing to worry about. Next, we need to remove this lower tray right here that flips open, and that we'll use the 7/32 driver for, and take out the 4 screws that hold it in. With those screws out, we'll pull this tray out and swing it around, and we need to pop this USB connector out. There's a clip on each side of it. And we'll get the help of our plastic tools here to pry out the clips on both sides at once. And pull the USB cable out. We'll also remove this plate here that the USB cable was in by pushing on the tabs all the way around it. And that'll make room for our hub that'll go in later. Next, we need to remove the 5 7mm screws holding what's called the shifter carriage in, because that overlaps this bezel up here. Once those 5 screws are out, this unsnaps from 2 clips down here, and we pull it back. We'll swing the carriage around. The USB cable that we disconnected is not going to be reused. You can tie it up and stuff it out of the way down in the front of the console. Just make sure it's not up in the shifter linkage up here. Now we can put the vehicle back in park and shut the ignition off. Next, we need to remove the 2 7mm that are down here that hold the bottom of the bezel. With those screws out, we'll pull forward on the bezel and work our way around with our trim removal tool to release it. You can get up top here, and you'll need to pull on it with some pretty good force to get it to release. The vents will come off with the panel. And these cables will be kind of tight back here. But there's a clip on top of each connector. There's 2 connectors, and you'll squeeze the clip and unplug the cable. Same thing with this one here. Once we remove the bezel, there's tabs along here, and we'll want to remove these vents off the bezel because they're going to get put in with the new bezel later. You'll see that as I release the clips, the vent will push out of the way. And then you remove it. It's pushing in on these clips. We'll slide it off the bezel. So we'll remove the 2 vents so we have them during reassembly later. Now we'll take the other bezel and set it out of the way as it'll no longer be used. Next, we need to remove the 4 7mm screws holding in the 4-inch screen, and we'll take the 2 screws out underneath this audio control module at the same time because that will be coming out. With those screws out, we'll pull the screen out, flip it around. In this connector, we push in this little lock right here where my fingernail is, and push this lever with our thumb, and it'll pop the connector out. We'll set aside this screen as it's no longer going to be used. The audio control module, we're going to need to run some cables behind it and plug in behind it. So we're going to pull that forward. And then these connectors, this little white connector here for the antenna connector, you push that in and unplug the antenna. And then these connectors here, you push in on the top, the tab in the middle on the top, and slide them out. And we'll set this aside for now. Next, we need to get to the sync connector that we're going to plug into with our harness at the sync module from the old system, and that's behind the glove box. So we'll drop down the glove box, and over here, this piece here that draws the glove box in, it's got a hole that you slide towards. You slide the whole thing towards the larger hole and then pop it out the side, and that'll allow the glove box to fall down. And then there's two tabs underneath here where my fingers are, and you'll push up on those so that the glove box will clear past. Then to remove the large 54-pin connector, we'll push in on the little lock in front of the lever, push the lever all the way open with our thumb, and drop it down. There will also be two wire retention clips back here that we'll want to pop out with a pair of needle nose pliers or a pry, flat blade screwdriver or whatever, just to get more pull on the cable to reach. Next, we need to install the conversion harness that came with the kit. The first part of this is we are going to take and free up this large connector, and that is going to route over to the sync connector that we just took out underneath the dash. So there's an opening here. We'll want to go through here, push past this vent, and pull this across. Right here, we'll plug these two cables together, make sure the gray lever is all the way open, start to push it in until the gray lever moves, and then use the lever to draw it the rest of the way in. Now underneath here, there will be a yellow connector here, and you'll just pry down on that a little bit, and we'll push this connector up past it. And that'll retain it up in there so that it has the best reach we can to the opening. Now we can put the glove box back up because we are done underneath here. So we'll put this retainer back in the side and clip it back in, and then push the glove box the rest of the way back up. Next, we need to start routing the other cables of the conversion harness. If you have a factory backup camera that displayed on your 4-inch screen, you'll install the little camera retention harness that came with the kit. We'll simply remove the cap off the yellow wire, plug it in, then we'll take this connector, only plug in one way, with the lever all the way open, push it in, and then click the lever to lock it. And then we'll shove that up out of the way. These two T-harnesses here will drop down behind the audio control module that we took out. When you put the audio control module back in, you'll just get these wires tucked all the way into this back corner. There's clearance in that corner for them to run. You just want to be careful you don't pinch them in there. So we'll take the connector that was plugged into the back of the audio control module here, and plug it into this T-harness here, and then this will plug into the audio control module, and we'll plug that back in. And you can also tuck excess in the back there. This tees in to the front control panel. You take the right angle connector and plug it in there till it clicks, and this will plug into the front control panel. Now, if your vehicle had come with manual climate controls when it had the 4-inch screen, you'll need to pin these 3 wires into the other connector that goes to the front control panel, and we'll show you how in just a moment. If your vehicle already had automatic climate controls, the harness that we ship you will not have these 3 loose wires, and you won't do anything. You will not have to pin these in. If you already had auto climate controls, you will keep your auto climate controls with dual zone. If you had manual climate controls, you will gain automatic climate controls, but it'll all be one zone. There isn't a driver passenger differentiation, but it will be automatic climate controls. So to pin these wires in, we'll want to have the connector facing up there, this white lock here on the connector we are going to pull out on, and there is a single click outward. When we flip this around, we're going to be pinning into 13, 14, and 18. So you can see the numbers really fine on here, but we also have a really good picture of this in the instructions that are included in the kit. So 13 and 14 are the second to the last 2 on the top here. So if you count 3 in from the upper right, it's going to be 13 and 14. Pin 13 is going to get the red wire. So when you slide these in, you're going to want to make sure that the crimp is facing towards the outside. There's only one way this pin will go in. So you'll want to make sure that the back side, the completely flat side, is facing in. Crimp side, where you see it curled over, is facing out. Third one over is going to get the red, pin number 13, and we'll just slide that all the way in until it clicks. 14 is green, so same thing, right next to it, there will be one empty hole past it. Slide them in until they click. Then 18 is this corner all the way over here. And same thing, you want to make sure that the crimp, the rolled over part that's crimping the wires facing the outside, slide that all the way in until it clicks, and then push this white lock back in. Next, we need to run the power for the media hub along with the media hub USB cable down to the hub. You will not reuse the USB cable that we unhooked earlier. So we'll route this down back here over to the side. And there's access right down the center, all the way in the back. So you'll push down in the center and pull out down below in the cavity where the other hub was. And pull that out. And then we'll do the same thing with the power cable. Next, we'll need to install the Sync 3 antenna that came with the kit. This antenna is included in both the navigation and non-navigation kits and must be installed in both applications, as even the non-navigation version will fault without it because it's used to set the clock for the compass and 911 assist. Included with it is a double-sided sticky pad and some alcohol prep wipes. So we'll open up the alcohol prep wipes. And in this case, we are going to locate the antenna. There's a flat spot right up here where my fingers are. You can see I'm pointing through with my finger here from the vent hole. It's flat right there. It's right below here. And this is all just plastic, so the antenna will transmit right through it and get, perfectly good signal. So we are going to stick it up there with the top of the antenna. So we'll clean the top of the antenna, and we'll reach up in there, and we'll clean that flat area. And we'll have to wait just a moment. When you're using alcohol to prep a surface for adhesive, it needs to completely dry on its own to adhere. You don't want to rub it with your fingers or anything, because then you'll get the oil from your fingers on it. So we'll remove one side of the double-sided adhesive, stick it to the top of the antenna, we'll pass the antenna underneath here, peel the other side of the adhesive, and we'll adhere it right up there. The antenna can be facing any direction, it just does need to be face up. And we'll tuck this up behind here, the excess antenna cable. Now that we have all our wiring routed, we'll reinstall the audio control module first. So we'll plug this wire connector in until it clicks. And then same thing with this connector as well from the T-harness. And then we'll plug the antenna back in as well with the white clip facing up. And tuck all our wires in so they drop down behind, and slide the audio control module back in. With the T-harnesses, it makes a little bit of extra bulk back there. So if you feel resistance before it hits the screw holes, just kind of slide it back out, tuck things out of the way. Next, we need to install the new Sync 3 screen module, and it comes complete with the cable attached and the forward edge brackets on it as well. So we'll take this complete assembly and we need to connect it to the cables that we've run up here. This main 54-pin connector here, we'll want to make sure the lever is all the way open and laying flat if it isn't already. Slide it into the back of the module and push till the lever starts to move, and then push the lever the rest of the way till it locks, to lock the connector in. Take the USB cable that we ran, clip side facing up, and plug it into the black connector. The light gray connector is unused. And then our GPS antenna connector has a small clip on it. You want to make sure that clip is facing down and the 90-degree cable is in a direction where it isn't going to hit the module before it clips all the way in. And push that in until it clicks. Now we'll turn this, tuck our wiring in, lift up the audio control module so it overlaps, and slide everything into place. And we'll start a screw to hold it. Next, we need to replace the 6 screws we took out earlier, including the 2 underneath the audio control module. With those screws replaced, we'll tuck this wiring with the T-harnesses in here to make room to plug in the bezel. Now we'll grab our new 8-inch bezel that was included in the kit, and plug in the connectors. The connector from the T-harness will go in where the 90-degree connector came out earlier. And then this long connector where we pinned in the 3 wires, if you had manual climate controls before, you gotta have the clip facing up and plug it into the long connector here on the back of the bezel. You want to tuck that wiring in. If we don't get the wiring neatly tucked in, the bezel will not push on correctly. We'll line up the bezel and snap it into place. Then we'll replace the 2 7mm screws we took out down at the bottom earlier that are up underneath this lip. And then we'll take our vents that we removed earlier, make sure they're snapped together. Sometimes these pop out here as you're removing them. And we'll slide them in each side. Once this foam ring is lined up inside this vent, they will slide in easily. Next, we need to reassemble the console area here. So we're going to just turn on the ignition without pushing the brake so the vehicle doesn't start, pushing the brake, and slide the shifter back so we can rotate the carriage. Make sure that the wires that you ran for the hub are pulled through the opening in the carriage so they don't get trapped underneath the edge. There's 2 clips down here that it has to snap into, and then you'll see the screw holes line up. Next, we need to replace the 5 7mm screws that were taken out earlier from the shifter carriage. Next, we'll grab the compartment that we removed earlier, and we'll grab the new Sync 3 compatible hub from 4D Tech, and we'll slide it in the compartment opening. There's only one way it'll slide in because there's some 45 angles in the plastic. We'll snap that in, and then we'll slide the compartment down into place. The power cable plugs in with the clip facing upward until it clicks in, and then diagonal from it on the back of the hub is the USB cable, clip facing outward till that clicks in. Then we'll slide the compartment in, and we'll replace the 4 7/32 screws we took out of the compartment earlier. Next, we'll grab the cover panel, slide it over the shifter. We can now put the vehicle back in park and shut off the ignition. And we'll reconnect the connectors that were down here. It's hard to see because of how short the cables are, but the connector here, we'll slide it back in with the clip facing outward into the back of the parking brake. And then this one with the clip facing outward in the back of that switch as well. And then what you'll do is set this panel down and snap it down first. And then you can snap the 2 pieces up around the bezel last. Next, we need to replace the 2 pieces of trim on each side here. Once you got it aligned, you snap all the clips in. And now everything is assembled. Next, we'll need to run the can opener flash programmer that came with the kit from 4D Tech to program the other modules in the vehicle to accept the 4-inch to 8-inch conversion. First, you'll want to make sure the ignition is on or the vehicle is running. With the ignition on, you want to make sure you take the programmer and that it does have the attached pigtail that it came with. Plug it into the diagnostic port underneath the dash, and we'll monitor the lights on the unit. They'll blink once, and then it'll blink blue while it's programming. You may hear the audio system reset while you do this. Once it turns green, that lets you know that it has successfully programmed the vehicle. You can now remove the can opener flash programmer as it'll no longer be needed. And now that we have the conversion complete, we'll fire up the vehicle and load up the new Sync 3 system. With the new Sync 3, this vehicle, we also chose to install the navigation version, so the navigation maps will load as well. You see we now have our navigation maps, And this vehicle that previously had manual climate controls now has single zone auto climate controls on the screen. You'll just want to make sure that you do not select the dual to try and run them separately. Now you see how to install the 4-inch to 8-inch conversion for the 15 and newer Ford Edge from 4D Tech. I am Scott with 4D Tech. Thank you for checking out our video.